I am honored to announce in the name of the SCORE Foundation for Science that the 2021 Best Young Researcher Award in Finance and Insurance has been awarded to Kim Peijnenburg, affiliate researcher at the Center for Economic Policy Research and member of the Network for Studies on Pensions, Aging and Retirement. Kim Peijnenburg's research focuses on household finance decisions. His recent article with Gianpaolo Parise, published in the prestigious Review of Financial Studies, Non-Cognitive Abilities and Financial Distress, particularly caught our attention. The authors develop measures of emotional stability and household consciousness that allow them to show that this stability is a determining factor in financial distress ahead of income, a very, very important result. The SCORE Foundation for Science is pleased to recognize researchers who highlight research fields that are less known but whose strategic character for the development of contemporary societies is very important.
So I'd like to start with thanking the Foundation and the Institute for giving me this award. Of course, it's a fantastic honor, and I'm humbled that you have chosen me to receive this award. So I will give a bird's eye view of my research, and I will keep it brief given that we are running a bit late. So in general, my research is it's working. So my research agenda is in household finance, and just to give a very broad overview. So what I focus on is why do households make puzzling decisions in general. So one of the things that you see that households do is that they don't invest in equity. While we all know from a theoretical perspective, this is optimal. We also see expensive debt holding, even if people could have cheaper debt, or even if they have liquid savings in their bank accounts. And in general, you see very little savings. So what I study in my research is these puzzling decisions and what can explain them. And I look both at rational explanations and behavioral explanations. Because of course, if it's a rational choice to make these seemingly puzzling decisions, then we should leave households alone. If it's rational, right? If it's, for instance, a preference, then that is that. If it, on the other hand, it's related to a behavioral trait, then maybe as policymakers or when working in the industry, we should think about correcting. Then it's important to know. So I try to focus on, is this rational, or are there behavioral explanations at work? So in particular, I focus on preferences, look at constraints, and I look at behavioral traits. Now, for this award, one paper of mine was singled out. So this is joint work with Gianpaolo Parise. And this was published in the RFS in 2019. And what we try to focus on is financial distress of households, and we try to see what plays a role. And what we find is that it's actually not the usual culprits like low financial literacy, for instance. We actually find that non-cognitive abilities are incredibly important. So when you look at this figure, you see that people in the lowest quintiles of non-cognitive abilities versus the highest quintiles, there's a 10-fold higher probability of being in financial distress. Now, these non-cognitive abilities, they're not new to economics. Actually, James Heckman has been working a lot on this. They're quite new to finance. So what we mean here is abilities that are not cognitive so much, and so not IQ, but we mean soft skills, or sometimes they're actually called personality traits, depending on the research. Now, we find that non-cognitive abilities are incredibly important, but that raises the questions, why are they so important? And we try to dig deeper, and we find that there's three main channels at work. So bad financial choices explains 1/3. So we find that non-cognitive abilities relate to bad financial choices, which in turn then leads to financial distress. We actually find that what is equally important is simply a lack of financial insight or awareness of households. So they don't have a full grasp of their own finances and what their own behavior is putting them at risk. So that explains 1/3. And interestingly, we actually find that income checks are important, but relatively less important. So it's not so much that people with lower non-cognitive abilities have lower income and face larger negative income shocks, and thus they end up in financial distress. Now, we think that this has important implications for policy, because I think it really shows that it's very important to improve financial insight or awareness of households. And I know that in many countries there are strong moves in favor of this. I know, for instance, I'm from the Netherlands, that we have this pension aggregator that provides financial insight in how well people are prepared for their pension. We have risk assessment tools, making people aware of the risks that they are taking. So I think in many countries we're moving towards that. And in terms of financial industry, there's now increasingly number of banks that, instead of, when you go there for investment advice, instead of assessing your risk appetite, they also assess your financial personality. So how able are you to cope with the anxiety that pertains to investing in assets, and making advice accordingly. So there's also a move towards assessing this in the financial industry. So that was the brief overview of my research. So I'd like to thank everyone, thank the organizers, and for giving me this award. Thank you so much.